Wait for it. Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guests introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Dave, DJ Butler.
Hey, thanks for having me back, JR. I'm Dave Butler. I publish fiction, mostly fantasy and science fiction for adults under the name DJ Butler. I've been writing for some 15 years. My 20th novel will come out later this year. From the E-Arc is just available as of yesterday, actually.
Cool.
From Vane Books. The Familiar Spirit is the title, co-written with Aaron Michael Ritchie. And I've also been at three different publishers now. I've been an editor. I did acquisitions at Wordfire Press for 3 years, to a large independent publisher headquartered in Colorado. And then for 3 years, I was sort of a part-time editor for Vane Books, which was a lot of fun. I got to edit some really terrific stuff, including a book by Tim Powers, one of my living literary heroes. And since January, I've been senior editor at Arc Press, which is a new, it's tough to say. We sort of reflexively say genre publisher, but the truth is we also publish literary novels. We're a publisher of novels, which we, one of our filters is we only publish things that we think men will be interested in. So we're looking to connect with male readers across multiple genres in literary fiction. I live in Utah, play guitar badly and banjo worse. 3 kids, 2 dogs, bunch of board games. Happy to be here.
Wordfire Press, is that the one that was Eric Flint's publishing company?
No, that's Ring of Fire Press. Wordfire Press was started by Kevin J. Anderson. Ring of Fire Press went through a bankruptcy, but I think they exist again. I'm not sure. They might be a 501c3 or owned by Eric's widow. I'm not entirely sure who the owner is. And the heart of what Ring of Fire Press always published was Eric's 1632 stuff. Kevin Anderson started Wordfire Press. I mean, I think literally he started it to put into print and put up ebooks of back catalog of I think it might have been literally, if I remember right, Frank Herbert's family took some of Frank's back catalog out to a publisher, and the money they were offered they felt was so ridiculously small. They asked if Kevin could do it, and Kevin did, and inadvertently became a publisher. So he's, I mean, at this point I'm not sure what the catalog size is, but it's one of the larger independent publishers, sort of non-traditional publishers in the US.
Okay. Now, we did an interview that hasn't aired recently, and somebody recommended, because they swore up and down that your Witchy Eye book is amazing and I should read it, because we trade recommendations of things we think the other will like. So I have to ask one, is there a series or is it a standalone?
That is book 1 of a series. There are 4 published to date. It is an epic fantasy series set in an 1815 alternate America. It's not exactly alternate history in the sort of the sense we usually think of it. Like, there's no... People will say, I would get emails when it came out, and they say, I don't understand this alternate history you've written. What is the moment at which this history diverges from our Earth history? And I would reply, and I would say, in the Garden of Eden. It is not our world until like 1805 or something. Like, it's a mirror image of our world. But as a Jacksonian era epic fantasy. Yeah. 2 more books coming in that. That's a lot of fun.
Okay. I'll have to check that out. All right. Next, we have Michael M.A. Rothman himself on the panel again. The man with many opinions, and he's not afraid to share them. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi. Yeah, it's Mike Rothman. I write as M.A. Rothman primarily. Let's see. I've got about... I lost count. I know it's in the 30s. 30 plus books, bunch of languages and whatnot. Background: I am a longtime science guy. I've worked for the government. I've worked for private companies, 3-letter agencies, and I mostly have spent the last 25 years or so in the, working both with the Silicon Valley and other institutions, let's just say. And I got into the whole writing thing kind of as a lark, and it just, this hobby turned into something a little more than that. So
your Amish series, the Yoder series, were pretty good. I enjoyed that one.
Oh, it did. Yeah, great. Yeah, I've got several series that are seemingly pretty popular, and I'm actually surprised because I do a lot of stuff in multiple languages, and evidently things. I guess if you like something in one language, most people seem to have similar tastes, or so it seems so far. So things that were popular in the US, UK kind of thing do fine in Italy and Spain, and so far Japan. So
cool. So the people that follow us on Twitter might recognize him because he is one of the places we steal a lot of memes. I mean, we liberate a lot of memes from. Don't worry, we forward them or whatever, so you get credit too. But
memes are meant to be copied, grown, and dispersed.
And I can't decide. It's gone back and forth. I don't know if you steal from Elon Musk more or he steals from you when it comes to the memes, because I see you two back and forth on Twitter sometimes.
The thing is that I sometimes, because I do have a lot of followers, Facebook and Twitter and whatnot, and occasionally I'll get an accusation that says, "Hey, you took this from there." It's like, no, I took it from somewhere else, but that was probably stolen from somewhere else, which was stolen from somewhere else. Like, I mean, my long form stuff is all me. When I'm posting stuff about my strong opinions,
lengthy, belabored puns.
Yeah. Very, very few of my puns are original to me. So they're stolen. I mean, sometimes they are, but what good does it do?
The fun ones are when you do the discussion prompts just to get people going. I know some people say it's engagement farming, but I have fun reading the back and forth, so I'll take it for what it is.
I mean, a lot of my followers is like, it's like, I'm liking this because I want to see the comments. It's like, because they know what's going to happen. Yeah.
It's part of the fun of the internet. It's like what it was in the Call of Duty lobbies back in the day on Xbox, right? Like, it's just free for all. That's part of the beauty of it, the blood sports.
Oh no, yeah. You used to have, even going back, Usenet flame wars. It's like, so it seems to be part of human nature. I think my writing reflects a lot of human nature, and the internet is no different. It reflects human nature.
Absolutely. All right. So because this is the Blasters Blaze podcast, we do have to do the religion question. But since you've been on the show, both of you, several times, we're going to mix it up and make it themed to the topic of the series we're going to be talking about. So we'll start with you, DJ. What is your favorite area of history?
Man, this turns out is an extremely difficult question.
All of them? That's a good answer.
So, all of them is correct. I'll tell you what I like thematically. Okay. My heart is always with, like, you look at my bookshelf. I'm not sure you could see there are areas where I have like more history books than others. Sort of 16th and 17th century England, maybe, right, would be an example. I like 17th century England's very into the Baroque era. You get the 30 Years War, you get the Rosicrucians. But thematically, I think what if you really look for it, you go, oh, there's a whole lot of this in Dave's bookshelves. It's not so much an era of history. I have a lot of feeling for the smaller peoples of the world fighting to maintain their culture and their independence and their language and their heritage. So, like, there's a lot of Wales and Catalonia and Ojibwe and similar, the Dutch, the Netherlands, I some of that is in my background, but whether that's why it's interesting to me, I don't know.
A
But
motley
I
crew of bizarre and eclectic civilizations across time and space.
and weird languages. I think right.
Yeah.
These are all languages that I've like studied and have yes history books, but also yes their literature and also So that more than a time period drive. And that's not my only interest. I love Egypt. I've got a lot of stuff on Egypt. Right, Egypt was a civilization that lasted continuously for something like 3,000 years. And in some periods was highly dominant. But yes, something about the underdog, the little culture trying to retain its identity at the fringe of the bigger empire resonates a lot with me.
Can we think of any other civilization that lasted as long as the Egyptians did? Because I can't off the top of my head think of one.
That we know of. I don't think there are. Yeah, it was incredibly stable. Partly, I think, because the ecology was extremely stable. They had this big valley, and until the Aswan Dam, you had incredibly fertile farming, right? And unlike, say, um, a nation of people like Israel were sort of on a crossroads, or Poland is another example where you're sort of going to get run over all the time by other people, right? Egypt didn't have that problem. They had these deserts surrounding them, which meant they had, Nubian or Libyan aggressor nomad nations, but those deserts also constituted a barrier that would make it hard for a large rival empire, Hittites or somebody, to come conquer them. I don't know, Mike. I don't know of a longer.
I would think you could argue the Roman Empire if you count the Eastern Roman Empire, because the Byzantines lasted for a while. If you combine the two, you could make that argument. I know some people don't like to count them as contiguous; they count them as distinct. The Eastern Roman Empire.
When do they end? Do they end with the Turks, like 1500?
I would think so. Yeah.
So then you've got
we're the Vandals, or the end of
Western Rome,
Italian, yeah.
So JR's point, though, is to say, but in the East, right, the Romaioi, not the Romani, their point of view is the Roman Empire didn't fall. Right, the Roman Empire is right here in Constantinople. But I think that's still not as long. Well, I guess it maybe depends on what you count from. Maybe that's the argument. If you go from like Homer to 1500, so you're like 2,300 years or something.
I think Egypt still got them beat at that point then. And Egypt is still a nation.
Yeah, and then if you start Egypt kind of late, and end it,
Cleopatra.
You could make if you end it before then, right? If you're like, when there are Libyan dynasties ruling in Egypt, it's no longer Egyptians, right? You could probably make an argument that Greece was longer. I think it's not true. I think Egypt is the winner, but Greece is nice and long.
Yeah. All right. So what about you, Michael? What is your favorite era of history?
I mean, the era of history, and it's probably right around the whole Fertile Crescent, ancient Egypt time frame. I mean, so much of our collective, Western society's history really goes back to that time frame. It's kind of the beginning of what we know of as historical religion. The polytheistic to ultimately monotheistic practices, and all of the mythos that we grew up, many of us grew up learning about. It's the ancient Greeks, it's the Egyptians, the Romans, and whatnot. That time frame. I mean, there's a span of a couple thousand years, all in a very localized area that has always been fascinating to me. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's so much to learn and explore, and that's kind of where time trials gets its footing from. Is that era, that and that locale.
It's even cooler because I've been to some of those places that when you've like in America, we don't have things as old as some of the like what you can just find in Europe alone, let alone in Egypt, where the pyramids are almost eternal at this point. They're so old, and so it's fascinating when you can stand on things that like are so old. And I know people that have gone to like Israel say the same thing as some of the monuments in Iraq and in Egypt with the pyramids. It's definitely gives you perspective when you stand on those footprints of history.
Yeah, that's very cool. Although we do have some quite old stuff in America. The challenge is, it's mute.
Is the thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, but all the mound, we have thousands of mounds, and some of them go back to like 3000 BCE. I mean, some of them are very old, but we have only very disputable writing, right?
Right.
Very little, and it's like, oh, here there's a Viking inscription, or there's like the Bat Creek stone, which may be Hebrew, right? There's whereas the pyramids have writing all over them.
There's a lot of open questions in the New World that are, I mean, like the Money Pit and everything else, in Nova Scotia,
Oak Island,
Island or whatever,
yeah.
But like, I just drove last week. Wait, what's today? This week, I just drove this week back from LibertyCon in Chattanooga, right past Cahokia, which is in the year 1000 CE. So this is only like 1,000 years ago, right? So it's not the pyramids, but still, it was a metropolis of the ancient world. Now that's like tens of thousands of people, not tens of millions, right? And it's hilarious how it's not fenced off. There are barely any signs. It is sitting in East St. Louis, and there's a bunch of if you guys have either of you been to Cahokia in East St. Louis?
No.
So it's these mounds. It was a city. There's multiple obviously artificial mounds made by very sophisticated people. Because I mean, think about this: they made an artificial mound of dirt, something that resists, that is it's counter to. It's not what the wind and water erosion patterns of the area would produce, and they have persisted for 1,000+ years, right? They're just sitting there. There's an app, you can get a tour. That's kind of all there is. And it's sitting in East St. Louis, which is a complete pit of a town.
Is it just dirt, or is there underlying structures that they know of, or have they done LiDAR?
I mean, I think so. This is a super interesting question. I don't have the book here. I have the book in my office, but there's a great there have been, I think, 2 seminars, and they were many years apart. Maybe there have been 3 about Hope, sort of studies about the Hopewell people who built Cahokia and other ancient monuments. And there's this super interesting pattern or change in paradigms. Okay, there's like 3 stages. So the first stage is 1848. The very first book the Smithsonian Institute publishes is called something like Monuments of the Mississippi Valley, I think. It's written by 2 guys. Neither one is an archaeologist, because in 1848, nobody is an archaeologist. So like, one of them is a dentist, and I forget what the other guy is. Okay, a surveyor or something. But it's a really interesting book. They go and they draw. You've probably seen their pictures, because they still get used, of their little pictures of maps of these hundreds of mounds they went to in the Mississippi Valley, right? Up along the Mississippi rivers, in the Ohio Valley. So they account for this, and they say, look, there are these mounds with palisades around them. We don't see any signs of villages, but whoever was able to build these things must have been able to just muster massive amounts of social control, You're heaping up artificial mounds. You're building walls. You're building towers. You're moving rocks. There are thousands of people. Somebody is like a king or something, and we don't know who that civilization is, but they must have preceded the local Indians, and then then there's these monuments, right? So that was the original kind of take. Over time, this became perceived as a problematic or even a racist interpretation, because the implication was heard to be the Native Americans are not capable of building these things, so there must have been some other race that was here, which disappeared, and so the interpretation changed, and for a number of decades, the dominant paradigm was, look, these were simply built by the ancestors of the Sac and the Fox and the various Indian tribes who were here. And so the assertion was, well, we don't see any signs of villages, so it must be the case that even though they were nomads, somehow they were able to muster up tens of thousands of people to come build these monuments, right? This was
the thing is, though, is that, I mean, I can't think of any examples where nomadic people ever created large structures. There wouldn't be a reason for it.
Yeah, this is the problem. So and technology, and you already talked about LiDAR. The technology changed the paradigm in the last 20 years or so. So because I think it's LiDAR, but they built these things. You can see videos on YouTube. I don't know what they're called, but it's like a yoke you wear over your shoulders, or
that's LiDAR.
And then has these LiDAR, guns that fire into the ground. And what it is it's a unit that's so small that guys would take them and they would just go. They go to the farmers who are adjacent to these mounds and say, "Listen, I'm just going to walk. It's non-invasive. I'm just going to walk around your farm, if that's okay, and I'm just going to take a look underground." And they started doing this like in the aughts, I think. And lo and behold, they found the missing villages. They found the garbage dumps. They found the walls. They found the huts. And it turns out that we're like back to the previous paradigm. There were huge villages around. There were cities around these massive mounds all over the Americas, and the Europeans who settled North America just didn't care about that stuff. They just built over it or plowed it under or took the rocks for their own walls, and so whatever was left of it basically disappeared. So anyway, sorry, this is like a long ramble. America is a huge epic fantasy land. We have a deep, massive history with probably dozens of different peoples with whole language families potentially who are just lost. And we may be able to find traces of them genetically, but we don't know anything about their language. We only know what we can infer from their culture, about their culture, from material remains. And we're talking about thousands of years of time. And they left, big stone, but especially big earth monuments all over the landscape.
And this, folks, is a writing prompt. Yeah.
This is a writing prompt. Now, why is it so much cooler to go to Stonehenge? I don't know. Stonehenge is very dramatic.
Well, I mean, they both have the same issue, is when you look at where the source material come from and then the labor that was intended to move all of that. They've been doing a lot of study on I think it's called the Echtfall girl. It's a young woman that was found buried in a mound in the Slavic areas. But that one is also because now that they can test like where people have been through their remains, and they're finding that she would have had to travel so farther than we would have thought possible in that day and age. I mean, because we're talking the prehistoric, but we're constantly learning new things. That LiDAR being used through small planes, they're finding entire lost Mayan and Incan temple complexes buried in the jungle.
Oh yeah, and like plane surveys for petroleum companies, and they get up there and look down, and you're like, holy crap, there are networks of roads in the jungle that we couldn't see before. Or monumental stone monuments like the megalithic cultures of Europe and North America. Yeah.
It's a fascinating thing, and they constantly find stuff like that. And so I suspect we'll get answers maybe not in our lifetime, but we've got some of the, was it that, I want to say it's the Denisovian, but that's not it. That's an Asian. But there's one of the tribes that we lost in the Americas that was here before the Bering Land Strait crossing. The
like
tribes
the
that were here,
people or something.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what they find. I think we're going to find more concrete proof that the world was more global back then than we thought because of trading. If you guys like that kind of stuff, Curiosity Stream, it's sort of like Netflix for nerds with documentaries, has some cool stuff like that on some of this prehistory.
There's a lot of hints that 1492 is certainly the time frame we know about of the discovery of the New World, but there's a lot of hints and seeming evidence that there was a lot of contact between the land masses well before that, why is papyrus that matches very closely to what you see on the Nile in the the Nile River Delta area? The papyrus that's there, you can find evidence of similar, not seemingly native, in like the South America area, on the eastern coast. Why would that be?
That's right up there with the Easter Islands, where we realized they were capable of more. That's the one where they got the half-buried statues, but they would have had to
they thought they were only heads for the longest time.
Yeah. And the running joke is you see them in cartoons as Pez dispensers, if you're old enough to remember those. But when you start thinking about what those people were able to accomplish with just like canoes, essentially, and they traveled far and wide.
Thor Heyerdahl, I think in the 70s. What's the name of his the name of he built a reed boat, and
Kon-Tiki?
The Kon-Tiki, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think it was the Atlantic, right? He crossed the Atlantic from Europe to North America, or vice versa, to prove it could be done.
Did he make it successfully?
Yeah, and people have done it since. In fact, there's a current of the prevailing currents are such that a boat that sets off from sort of the shore of Southwest Africa will get carried over and thrown into the Caribbean, or thrown up against the panhandle of Florida if it just goes with the currents.
Now I know like geographic land masses have moved over time. So like if you went back in time, standing on the banks of the Nile, you might not be next to the Nile if you went back far enough.
Far enough, right?
Evolve? I know star patterns would evolve as things, but would currents be consistent?
Currents would probably change, but Homo sapiens, I don't know what the current science is, but to the best of my recollection, I think we think that Homo sapiens has been around for hundreds of thousands of years, not millions, as far as we know. But the Homo sapiens, with our basic bone structure and our size brain pan, it's 100,000 or a few 100,000 years, and so that's the scale, right? So were there some kind of hominids back in Pangea? Man, I don't think anyone thinks that, but maybe. But like there were people like us, as far as we could guess, who are as smart as we are and have the same basic tool set, well before the last ice age, right? And this is kind of one of the basic premises of the time trial series. I firmly believe we do not yet begin to understand the history of our own species, and because of technology, and it's not always just tech. Sometimes it's developments in linguistic scholarship, right? And we start to see more clearly ancient groups moving around by their language, or sometimes it's literally excavation, right? Göbekli Tepe and then Karahan Tepe, and I think there's something older than both of them now, isn't there? Yeah. So
the thing that's shaking it up now is they're deciding that they think the out of Africa theory is not complete. They think that some of the other Homo sapiens actually simultaneous evolution in other parts of the world.
Man, super interesting. And I think you don't have to. First of all, I think that a YouTube channel like the Y Files is a lot of fun.
Yes.
You don't have to think any of those things are correct to go, look, just on the very prosaic science that you took freshman science classes, you'd say, wow, we have been around for a few 100,000 years, and we only know the very end of that history.
Right.
But like our ancestors probably lived in houses, and they probably, drank out of drinking vessels, and they had the brains we did. One of my favorite books, has been since I was a teenager, so I guess like going on 40 years now, is a book called Hamlet's Mill, and it's an analysis of mythology in the light of astronomy.
Okay.
And what the authors argue is that a lot of our oldest stories really are encoding astronomical data, and when they come from, the reason that like humans show up and there's these stories, right? We start writing and these stories get written down is because the stories are much older than writing, and they go back to a time when, this is the theory, right? Human beings are out there, Homo sapiens, and they are watching the night for generations, and they are figuring out the movements of the stars and the sun and the moon and the timings of the eclipses. Remember that stuff. They're encoding it in poetry and in myth, and passing it on down as oral literature, which that may not be true. It's a hypothesis, but it's an interesting one, right? Because it says there are people who are basically doing sort of the basic activity of science, recording, measuring, trying to predict, probably thousands of years. One of the things that they seem to have understood is the precession of the equinoxes. So it's probably thousands of years before we ever knew how to write.
I mean,
the thing that's amazing to me is really like folks today have a very strong bias against people from long ago, because we think about, well, they didn't have access to the education and stuff like that. So, but today we know of people, we may be smart, we probably know people who are much smarter than us individually, and we know what we're capable of today. But all you have to do is go back 3,000, 3,500 years ago, and just look at how much skill does it take to get giant 50-ton blocks cut so precisely you can't fit a sheet of paper between the blocks. I mean, the architecture and the design and the technology for these uneducated people.
And we still don't know exactly how they did it as far as the buildings.
Right, and that's the thing, is that these people were no different. Just going back to the whole Homo sapien, we're physically and genetically really the same people. So it's us going back in ancient times with the same capacity to understand. We may not have the education, but that really ultimately doesn't matter. We have the same intellect capabilities, and that's what the ancient people were. And so it's kind of fun to explore that. But we tend to think of the ancient people as sort of backward, and that would be a mistake.
Yeah.
So
we've developed an I think this is a habit humans have always had. I think in every age we've said, aha, finally humankind has reached its apex. And you find, maybe especially in some kinds of religious literature, sort of a counter argument that says, no, we are declined. There used to be an age of gold and silver, and now we're living in an age of clay, right? But the Romans thought they were the best, and the Victorians were convinced they were the apex, right? So do we. And we add the specially nasty twist that everybody before us was also racist. So not only are we better than them, they were racist. So we're more.
And the problem with today is, especially with technology, we are losing some of our natural, I'll call it God-given capabilities, but genetically capabilities. Like for instance, how well are we at memorizing numbers when that's what all we had to. I mean, like if you remembered your neighbor's phone number because you needed to, it wasn't on your phone. So we have tools and things that are making us not have to exercise, our muscles, our brains, or whatever, nearly as much as we used to, which would argue that we're kind of going backwards in some of our natural capabilities.
Yeah, it's super interesting, right? So this is Plato made this argument. Plato lamented the invention of writing, and he said, we used to have to remember more, right? And we're sort of taking it one step further because for Plato, writing, like you didn't walk around with an encyclopedia on a donkey beside you, right? Like books were in a building, and now they're here. So like, and the numbers on kids who are using large language models using so-called AI to do their homework, right? It's insane. So like 5 years ago, kids were learning how to index. Now they're not even doing that. They're just they get a question and they're just giving it to the AI and they're turning it in, right? And I wish I could think we were reverting to an oral society, but no, oral societies had great memories. They knew they could know vast volumes of information. We're degenerating into something very strange, which is like an emoji society where we know nothing.
Great again.
Yeah, we just whatever is in here is true presumptively. And I actually, yes, this is a bad direction.
I mean, even the conversation we're having where you're bringing up Heyerdahl, and I'm like, when was the last time I thought of Kontiki? Maybe 30 years ago, but it was in there somewhere. It's like
exactly.
Yeah.
So if we do go back in time, because we'll push this forward so we can start evolving into the books that brought us here, because otherwise we'll get nerdy and 3 hours later we're like, wait, did we talk about the books? So if you traveled back in time and you could only take one thing with you, what would you take, DJ?
I might take a topical antibiotic.
Practical. Okay. What about you, Rothman?
I would probably take like a fire starting kit, like flint and steel kind of thing, because if I have fire, if I can easily make fire, I can make a lot of other things from that. I can do a lot of things, and depending on how far back I'm going, you never know. So that's probably what I would take.
Practical. I might have started with some tools that would allow me to make other tools, because slapping flint together isn't that hard if you've got the rocks around. I guess it depends on where you're going.
Yeah.
As far as what's available, and that would be a factor. If you did travel back in time, DJ, what would you miss the most, do you think?
What a great question. I think the answer is electric guitars. I think there's probably anywhere you go, there's some kind of a stringed instrument. I think the sort of lute family is pretty widespread, or things like a lute, or you could make. I mean, the most basic string instrument is a diddly bow. All you need for it is like a dried, animal intestine and a board. Electrification, the ability to put on effects pedals, I'd be sad.
Yeah, there's because like I said, I got the Curiosity stream, so I watched some of they've actually found some of the ancient instruments and then ancient skeletons for like the pre-hominids, and using AI to factor it in, they're able to try to recreate, to the best of our understanding of physics, what the sounds would have been, to the point where some of the Sumerian songs that we knew they played, they were able to try to recreate. It's fascinating what music. It's been around longer than I would have thought before that, but you definitely would not have electricity. So yeah, I can see that. What about you, Michael? What would you miss the most?
My my first immediate response wasn't actually responsive to your question. It was something different. But yeah, but from a modern perspective, you know, uh, I think we take for granted the food that we have that is actually like worm free and like and
Yeah.
free of things that will have things growing inside of us, because the vast majority of folks outside of the Western world that are living really off the land are living with constant cases of some serious infestations that
Yep.
I've read the reports of people fleeing North Korea that go to the South Korea,
Oh
and
yeah,
that's one of the first things they have to do. Is most of them are riddled with parasites and
yeah,
stuff. It's crazy.
yeah. No, my first reaction was and I'd actually had this thought a long time ago when I had a pet run away, and if you consider how much we take for granted having a home where you can actually go to sleep and you're not concerned about a predator coming to eat you,
Yeah.
or being attacked. The modern concept of safety, that you can just fall asleep and you're not worried, is a foreign concept to many people that live in wilder parts of the world. So
Yeah, that was the
Isn't
biggest
some of the
culture
things
shock when I was overseas, was the idea that I had to dump my boots out every morning before I put them on, just to make sure no creepy crawlers got in.
the scorpions?
Yeah. So I feel you on that one. So all right,
I
we're gonna
recall this being isn't this in Tom Wolfe's book, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, where he's following along with Ken Kesey's sort of acid community in the 60s in the Bay Area. And as I recall, they basically, maybe I'm confusing it for a different Tom Wolfe essay, but I think this is the one. They give up sort of modern hygiene, right, in the name of like rustic simplicity and getting back in touch with ourselves. But like the result is they get scrofula and other diseases that have been totally eliminated from modern society by basic hygiene, right? By having thoroughly cooked food, by sleeping off the ground, by having clean water, by taking regular showers, right? Turns out if you don't do those things, you get sick.
Yeah, they started having things like was it the plague that came back to California recently, or not? Was it the plague or some illness that we would have thought was prehistoric, or like just really really old, and they're coming back. So yeah, I could see that being an issue. So we're gonna pause for a moment while we shamelessly show for the man, and then we're gonna dive into the books that brought us here, because I want to get nerdy about time trials.
35 awesome stories started by one kick-ass meme. It started as a joke. Storm Area 51, they said. They can't stop all of us, they said. But all laughter has stopped when the U.S. Air Force mobilized and pulled out the big guns. However, relentless mockery and derision by the media and the powers that be pushed the dweebs and alien enthusiasts too far. What else were they supposed to do? They said why not, and showed up, determined to find out what secrets were hidden behind the walls of the clandestine government facility. Are you brave enough to buy this anthology today? If you are, find out what the government wants to keep hidden. Read Storming Area 51, a Bayonet Books anthology.
All right, thank you for sticking with us to that commercial interlude. So, any truth to the idea, Rothman, that you've been to Area 51?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
All right, so as we come back to talk about specifically the time trial, so first, can we start with how did you get the idea for the series, and which one? Like, you can both answer. Like, where did it come from? What part bounced off of whom first?
Man, I don't remember what the original seed was. I think Mike. I think the reason we did this in the first, Mike was the one who started the ball rolling. I can't remember, Mike, what the piece was. I
think we had an original thought with regards to more along the lines of the end state, and then it's like, but why don't we start in ancient Egypt, and it was really and I started talking with Dave because he's I I can bring science thriller, that kind of stuff, heaps and gobs of it, and Dave's really strong on fantasy and history and culture and stuff like that. So it's a good meshing of the two, because it's hard to pinpoint even though I think arguably this is a fantasy series. I think many people would argue that it's got elements of multiple genres in it, including thriller, science fiction, fantasy, etc.
Yeah.
So neither one of you remember where it started, as far as the basic concept of the idea?
I can't remember what the original piece was we started with. We started with something. I think very early on, one of the early ideas might have been, I know Mike had in his earlier series about Peebo.
Yes.
I'm forgetting the name of the series.
The Planeswalker.
The Planeswalker, yeah, had experimented with kind of a light lit RPG and had some success, and said, "Hey, I'd like to do this." And I'm not gonna lie, it took some convincing, but like I got there. You like explore. You push back and forth, and hey, what about time travel? How about monsters? Hey, what about? I mean, I think one of the things we might have discussed early on is sort of trying to find sort of something like the simplicity of the formula of Larry Correa's Monster Hunter series, where it's like pretty much you're getting what it sounds like. There's guys hunting monsters. And I think that was one of the early discussions too, is how do we get guys fighting monsters?
And I think it was kind of an impossible task that we set for ourselves, because I think certainly one of my foremost goals in the very beginning was I want to be able to construct something, and I think we can, that could fool people that are people with a gaming background that like lit RPG type of thing, which is a relatively new genre, but folks who are into gaming of sorts, write something that would entertain them, entertain thriller readers, entertain sci-fi and fantasy type readers, and put that all in one book. Could that even be done? And that would be the argument, that you're like, I think we can do this, but it has to be structured in a very specific way. And actually, that was the toughest thing to kind of work out, is that it's like no, because it's very easy to kind of like delve too far into one genre that make the others kind of like lose their minds, and so we needed to keep it very arguably believable yet fantastical at the same time.
How did you come up with the covers as they are? Because there's other versions of the covers that are floating around on the audio versions of the covers that aren't like this one. And I'll throw that up there. It's got more of a Western vibe.
Dave, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So Mike, who owns a publishing house, reached out and got us the covers for Time Trials and Ice Trials. And in each case, contractually got the right to let a subcontractor use the same art to produce, audiobooks or ebooks or whatever. And this was communicated to Recorded Books / Tantor. And we said, we got this art, and they did not use it, and they did not tell us why, and who knows. Yes, this cowboy hat guy does not bear a resemblance to any one of our characters. I guess he's sort of Indiana Jones looking, but like to the extent we have a single Indiana Jones figure, he's half Chinese, half Jewish, and it doesn't wear a hat. So
there was a lot of gnashing of teeth at the lack of synchronicity between the actual cover styles, on audio versus the.
I like the main one, the one that we're looking at now. I think it's a way better cover.
Yeah, this is the
agree.
one Mike got.
Yeah.
And then here's the other one for book 2, and then we'll go into that real quick. But yeah, the audiobook covers aren't as good in my opinion as what you guys had for the main thing. This is at least closer to the second one, Ice Trials.
It is. Yeah, it
but
is.
I still think your composition is way better than what the audiobook files or audiobook.
Yeah, I also don't know who this emo looking guy in the fur. Again, it's like I don't think that's any one of our characters.
No.
But
Yeah,
I guess
I mean the problem is we had no input whatsoever on the audio. In fact, we gave input that was ignored.
Right, and look, for all we know, it was to our benefit. For all we know, those covers help sell for some reason, right? Or for all we know, they have a contractual constraint that they have to use the cover designers that they have.
Right.
Just don't know. We've had no community. We just said, hey, Bain, please tell them they can use the cover. And what showed up did not have the cover.
So,
and in fact, we gave them the I gave them everything. So it was theirs to not use.
Yeah.
So for parents listening, because this is one question they want us to ask all of the books. What would you say the age range of this series? Because obviously there's more than one book in the series. What would you say the age range where it's appropriate for someone to kind of start reading this?
I'd say PG-13.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that's the sort of level. We have some very mild cussing. There is it's very mild. The stronger element that we have is violence. It's action violence. We don't have torture. It's not extremely gory.
Right.
Some of it is. Some of the monsters don't die like flesh and blood creatures do anyway. Some of them basically melt into goo. The closest we've got to any sexual content is some pretty, mild. So is flirtation. We've have a romance plot or two here and there. But it's PG-13 and maybe even PG, frankly. Maybe even PG.
Yeah, nowadays, given what I'm
true.
I'm hearing is in middle school and high school.
So and then by the way, so there's a long tradition of especially young men sort of hitting a certain age, and if they're readers, there aren't really books written for them anymore, so they jump to reading sci-fi fantasy. This is very eminently suitable. The risk is that they might get exposed to ideas about things like how gunpowder is made, or how one might purify water, or what is nanotechnology. I would happily.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it may very well be PG because there isn't anything that I wouldn't. This is more about the reading level. Yeah, it's like if an 8-year-old was capable of reading this and would get it and be no problem, then there was nothing in it that I would have any qualms about. So.
Yeah.
So there are currently 2 books out in the series.
Correct.
How far do you see this going? Is it a duology? Is it going to be a trilogy? Is it going to be a Bain trilogy with like 100 books?
No, it'll be a trilogy. I'd argue it'll be a trilogy.
Yeah, unless something really surprising happens. That is the plan of record, as we used to say in the microchip industry.
Yes.
Some people still do say it, probably.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So when this series ends, because you've got a definite end goal in mind, do you foresee coming back to this world with other stories, or you think you're going to move on to something else when you're done? If people like this, are you going to be writing more in this space?
So my response to that would be a similar response I have to all my books.
Okay.
I'm heavily influenced by readership. So yeah, if magic happens and there's a lot of demand for something, that can sway decisions. So
It sells well. We definitely have a readership. This is,
Yeah.
I hear regularly from people, oh, I love this book. People on my Discord server were like lamenting just this week. Oh man, I got really attached to Kareem. What did you make Kareem do at the end of book 2? I was like, well, yeah, he's having a hard time right now. So yeah, but the plan of record is 3. But yes, and who knows, right? In theory, or depending on how book 3 really ends, there might be a subsequent series that looks very different, conceivably.
Right.
So this is just broad strokes, but obviously you like all of your characters. Do you have a favorite, both of you, in this universe?
Oh, what a good question. Favorite for what?
Just broadly speaking, because obviously we're going to, in a second, explore like who the main characters are, but
yeah,
sometimes we have preferences.
Yeah, so who would I like to be friends with? Man, I think Marty, I think he would be a great boss. I think he'd be a great guy to work with. He'd be a great neighbor. Like responsible. He's over himself. He's not neurotic, self-obsessed. He might not be the funnest guy, but like if you were like, hey, I want someone to live me. Although we set him up as a board gamer, so maybe we haven't really seen him do much of that. If I had to pick somebody to like be around my family or me or my job, I think I'd pick. Yeah. I'd probably pick Marty.
Marty's pretty straight-laced.
Yeah. Yeah. Francois might be more fun in some ways. If you had him as a friend, he might say, hey, we're getting in my jet and going to Nepal for the weekend. Do you want to come? There's a kind of a fun there too.
What about you, Rothman? Do you have a favorite?
I mean, Marty is the obvious choice. And I like the Marty Luana dynamic. But yeah, it's hard to go away from Marty. I mean, Marty's kind of from the beginning is always intended to be sort of one of the main, if there's a main character, the main character, but or leader of the group, so to speak. But
yep.
Yeah, I mean, all of the characters have very specific roles, even though they're very, very different. Yeah. I mean, Kareem's a little unpredictable. Young also. Surgeon's very stoic, very keeps to himself. Francois would be very unpredictable. Gunther would be, he in my mind would be sort of the reliable, but wallflower type. I mean, Gunther would probably be a good, just general, person to hang out with as well, I would think.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about the main characters in this story?
Well, it's an ensemble cast. It's
Okay.
these 6. You get minor characters. We start out with a couple of other present timers. They don't last, or they don't stick around. Marty Cohen's our main character. He's an ancient languages guy. He gets invited to this obscure private dig because they found some Egyptian that nobody else can read, and they want him to come read it.
Daniel Jackson?
And sorry, say that again.
So Daniel Jackson, basically.
Yeah, if Daniel Jackson was also kind of like Kane from Kung Fu, he's Marty's. Marty has left academia because he hates the sort of careerism and the political correctness. From academia's perspective, it might say we have ejected him for being uncivilized for hitting another academic, but in defense of a woman, right? So Marty is also a gamer and a craftsman. Marty owns a small woodworking shop in Connecticut when we meet him. Kung Fu Cohen. He's a kung fu student from his childhood with his Chinese grandfather. Francois is it's his dig, it's his money. He's rich. He's sort of a dilettante. He's gotten degree after degree. He's very inventive. He's got a lot of like literally he will make things, practical things. So he's when they're among people with atlatls, he's explaining to them how to make bows and what the advantages are of a bow over an atlatl, right? Or in book one, when they encounter sources of bat guano, he gets excited because he realizes he can make bombs, and proceeds to do so. And there's especially in book one, there's sort of a leadership struggle between those guys, because from Francois's point of view, this is all his money, and they happen to have gone back in time, but like this is his dig and his money, and he was always in charge. But since they've gone back in time, this is sort of one of the questions: is could a monk type character, could a self-restrained, not shy but fundamentally soft-spoken, nice guy be the leader of something like a D&D party, right? So there's a bit of a leadership struggle between Francois and Marty in the first book. Surjan is Sikh. He's pretty laconic, pretty stoic, quiet guy, highly competent, very dangerous, who gets into a deeply awkward romantic situation in book two, when he accidentally kills the old king of a society that then promptly wants him to be the new king and marry the queen. And this is not what Sir John planned on. Sorry, I'm just sitting here talking about all of them, Mike. I should.
No, go ahead.
I'm fascinated.
I'm nodding along, so go ahead.
When Mike told me about the idea so we could set this up, I was already sold. So when I get my credit on Audible, I'm getting it. So you sold me already.
Cool. So Gunter is an old professional, i.e. Egyptological friend of Marty's. Marty's a language guy. Gunter's more of a sort of pottery and digging things out of the ground guy. He's German, and he was, during his military service, he was a medic. One of the things that I have not been saying is that the light lit RPG aspect is that we think of these characters with a D&D character class. So Marty is a monk, and I said that, and I actually meant that fairly literally. And by the way, as he progresses, he develops monk powers. So in book one, at one point, you see him having monk controlled falling abilities and unusual climbing abilities, right? Luana is Australian. She's Aboriginal. She is a culture, ancient and primitive cultures expert. Sorry, I'm like getting very circuitous here. Marty's a monk, Francois is a bard, Surjan is a ranger, Gunther is a cleric, right? For those of you who are familiar with D&D, we see early on in the ancient world kind of hints of different skills, and as they develop, the characters develop more of these powers. Luana is a druid. And so from the very beginning, we get back in the ancient world, and she is understanding the speech of animals, which is initially sort of an experience that would make you doubt your own sanity.
I can see that.
You simply hear voices coming out, right, out of the darkness or out of the grass all around you all the time. Kareem is a thief or a rogue, and he's a young Egyptian. He's basically a digger. He and his uncle Abdallah are both diggers, and Kareem was a guy who this job was maybe part of an opportunity for him to go straight, or his uncle trying to get him to do honest labor as opposed to mugging people or stealing motorcycles or whatever in Cairo. And again, you see him developing rogue powers and also struggling against the sort of inherent psychopathy of that D&D character class, right? We had long discussions about, when we were writing book 1, about if and when we wanted him to go, as they say, full murder hobo. And the answer is, I won't spoil it, but like it is part of his character arc. Yes.
Okay. Do you have any favorite secondary characters? And both of you can answer, because there's a lot in a book like this. There's got to be.
Mike,
I mean,
sorry,
for a
I just
secondary
talked
character, it's kind of hard. I mean, because book 1 would certainly be different than book 2, because they're, the thing that may not be obvious is they're in very distinctly different places between book 1 and book 2. So the majority of the time in book 1, you are spending it in ancient Egypt, and so. There are an ancient cast of characters that you kind of get exposed to. I have a particular preference for Narmer to an extent, who is an actual ancient Egyptian pharaoh, and
at the
from
very beginning.
From the very beginning, and so you're getting a peek, or what would be a peek of the beginning of ancient Egypt, kind of the splitting of the north and south, and or the uniting of the north and south. So and that would be an example of one. I don't know that I'd have a specific one, because there's enough cast of characters. Sometimes the secondary characters don't become such a prominent piece that you necessarily latch onto, because they may be transient. I mean, certainly in book 2, for me, I like some of the bad, like the Queen was a character, who you had to deal with. So she definitely had some interesting features about her that made you want to root for or against one way or the other.
So since these the first 2 books are out already, and you've already engaged with the audience, do you have any fan reactions to some of your characters that have surprised you? Because I'm always surprised at the number of people that latch on to throwaway, side characters that were never intended to be anything, and then fans, for whatever reason, just latch on.
Sammy the Kobold.
Mm-hmm. I haven't seen anything myself. I don't know, Dave. You might interact more with some folks.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't think I have. I think I've had people talk about different main characters of this cast of 6. But I've never had anyone say, oh, I really like, so and so the spearman in book 1, or there's a woman, I'm forgetting her name. There's a woman that sort of falls in love with Surjan, who's kind of this spear maiden. And he has a romantic relationship that he puts aside. He ends because they sort of think they're going back home, or they're trying to go back home, and that is not what happens at the end of book 1. There's a ferret in book 2. Actually, I have had people say this is actually the answer. There's a ferret, and I have had people say how much they like the ferret, and they really hope the ferret made it out of the tunnel before it collapsed at the end of book 2. And I say, well, in your head canon, you can have whatever you want happen.
At least it comes out.
It's amazing to me how people latch on. I mean, and I guess this is a clue to authors. It's like, it's like, if you toss in an animal that has any kind of interaction with the main character, people will fall in love with that animal almost every single time. Yeah,
It is funny.
which
It is a
cool.
little. It is a little bit like it's the the R2D2 or what's the little two balls round rolling robot in the sequels.
Did he have a name?
Something 8.
Oh,
I don't
maybe.
remember.
I don't know.
I forget. So yeah, what's the name of the ferret? Now I want to pull up the outline and see what the name of the ferret is. The weasel. Supiluliut is the name of the weasel.
I have got the impression that your audiobook narrator might have had some harsh words with some of the naming conventions in this book.
Never reached out to us. I would have said, look, it's no problem. This whole culture has names that are basically slightly modified from Hittite. And they would have said, oh, okay, that's easy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually... I do know, since I mentioned it, there are obviously Tantor did make audiobooks. So if you read with your ears, that is an option. That I will say, generally speaking, is one of the benefits of the trad published books. You tend to get audiobooks.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great banter in these books, and there's a lot of great humor, and these are great listens. This is a great way to consume these books.
Okay, if you had to, like, say this series kicks off and Bane like beats down your door and like, hey, we want more in this universe. If you were going to pick any other point of view character to make a spinoff series, do you have anybody in mind? I mean, this is just spitballing for the fun of it right now. No commitment, obviously.
So we have not. So how the series ends might mean some of the characters are not available for different reasons. I think so. I'm going to say this. I have not even said it to Mike yet. So, like, I'm going to say this. Mike might be like, "No, you're stupid, Dave." This would not be the first time he said this. One of the themes. This is something that I've been thinking about recently, actually, about these books. One of the themes is human migration.
Okay.
So in both books we've had basically Marty leading a group of humans from a hostile climate looking for a better place to live, right? Whether that's like a climate change kind of scenario, which book 2 is. Book 2 is climate change. I'm not saying I'm a big climate change guy, but like actually at the end of the Ice Age, climate did change and it displaced everything, right? So but book 1, it's basically war or oppression, right? So one possibility that might be fun, if we chose to end book 3, and there is a sense in which book 3 I think is going to end where book 1 began. If book 3 is also about human migration, it might end with somebody like Marty leading a party of survivors away from sort of the great climactic battle to a new world, which might be in Earth past, or it might be in a different brain of the cosmos, or it might be aboard a commandeered spaceship into the void. And if it were just me, and you're saying, Dave, what are the odds of what's the most likely scenario we're going to sequel series? I would say that might be one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned that you have monsters in these books. So can you talk a little bit about that? How did you pick them? Since you mentioned the gaming angle, did you just use the bestiaries from the various, tabletop games, or did you use the legends and lore from the various cultures? Like, how did you figure out what monsters to populate the world with?
So I think we went in two different directions depending on which book you're talking about. Like book 1, it would have been, cultural. It would be criminally cultural, disappropriation, I guess, if that's such a word, to not use the pantheon of ancient Egypt. So it's like so ancient Egypt is rife with interesting fodder. So now at the same time, so if you imagine, all of the characters that you picture in your mind for ancient Egypt, all the mythos and all the pictures and hieroglyphs and everything else, and the stories that are told. But at the same time, you'd ask yourself, it's like, well, if such things really were there, why don't we have evidence of it? So you know, this is the dance that we had to dance in book one: is how do you make something that is very fantastical in many ways, but also not, kick the thriller, the more straight and narrow thriller readers in the nuts, saying, this is nonsense. How would you be able to get them to believe? So we take some unique, approaches to the pantheon, but it's heavily influenced by what we would know as Egyptian mythos. And then in book two, I think largely that, you're, it wouldn't be giving too much away to say that they figure out pretty quickly that they're in an ancient past, kind of hypothetically around the ice age or end of ice age is what they figure, and they would be right. And for those who don't know, there's a lot of megafauna still wandering around that could serve very well as things to be concerned about for modern day, people. We weren't the biggest and baddest, by any stretch of the imagination. So you can imagine, this is when you had giant sloths, still wandering around, saber-toothed tigers, all sorts of bad things that we don't have today. But we're very, very present in the past. So, so we didn't have to make too much up when it came to that.
Yeah. There's also I'm just going to say it, space aliens thing going on. And so in book one, we draw a lot out of the Egyptian mythos. But there's also like an alien thing, and we see more of the alien thing, in a way that fans of the Y-Files or of the sort of people who are excitedly following Disclosure to see what we're going to learn about Area 51 will recognize and resonate with.
I'm more of the variety that says I used to believe in aliens till the government told me they were real.
Damn it! There's no aliens.
Right. So, when you made up aliens, did you still let like Mother Nature inspire their physiology, or did you just let your imagination run rampant?
I mean, people will recognize them. People will say, "Oh, alien watchers will go, oh,
okay,
these are aliens."
No spoilers. That's enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you could have gotten, because I know we're close to the hour and some change mark, because we all like to talk. If you could have moved into this world and experienced these adventures with your characters, are you going with them, or are you staying at home and grabbing the hot chocolate?
I've got the hot chocolate.
Yeah. I'm willing to have lots of adventures in my life, but not on this scale. I mean, these are adventures I think you would only choose if you absolutely had to, which is the situation of our characters. You had no choice; you were thrust into them, or if you were just nuts. If someone offered you these experiences, you should say no.
Yeah, I mean, because in essence, both books really are about, imagine you have 5 other coworkers that you're on. Let's just pretend you're an archaeologist and you're at a dig site, and you've got 5 coworkers, and suddenly you find yourself in these precarious situations. That you're modern people in a unknown. I mean, there's no instruction manual. You don't know where you are. You don't know when you are. These are all things you have to go figure out. And then toss in, the evil authors, or the gods of the world that start giving you some people are hearing things. Everyone's experiencing different aspects of the world in different ways. So yeah, it's not a and we don't like to play the Deus Ex Machina. Magic happens, everybody's fine. It's like, they're experiencing this weird stuff, and they're acknowledging there weird stuff's going on. I don't believe how would you react if you suddenly found yourself in a world that you were faced with an ancient Egyptian image of something?
Joel Rosenberg's classics Guardians of the Flame series was pretty great about this. I think there might be 3 books in that series. I forget what the first one is called. It's like something the dragon. But we meet the characters. They're all college kids. They play D&D. They go to have their D&D session. Suddenly they become their characters, and they're in this D&D setting, right? How cool is that? Except like in the first chapter, their buddy, who is a thief, gets speared in the gut and dies. And like, oh, this is not a game, right? So the beauty of, this is a big conversation, JR, right? But like the beauty of literature is the ability to vicariously experience the thrill, the danger, the defeat, the victory. Man, I'd love to read histories or novels about World War II or Cold, whatever. Man, wouldn't, and I, if I had to, right, would I fight for my country? Sure. I do not want to do it. I do not want to go fight giant jackal-headed monsters in the Egyptian desert to stop them from eating humans,
And the interesting gaming aspect of this is that we've taken the approach that none of these members are actually gamers in the D&D sense. So they have no experience or understanding or presumption that even some of the things that they're experiencing are associated with a gaming thing. So a thriller reader is just fine. They're experiencing the story, but a gamer is going to go, aha, I know what you're doing, author. This guy's experiencing, this guy's, getting druid, or this lady's got druid capabilities.
Druid powers. This guy's a cleric. That guy's a ranger.
Well, I can say that I think the cardinal most unforgivable sin in literature is to write the characters that are too stupid to live, where you wonder how Darwin failed them. The fact that they breathe air. And I've read enough of Michael's stories, and he's a smart dude himself. I can tell you he never writes those characters. Sometimes they're almost too smart for their own good, which fits with him. But you'll never get the ones that are too stupid to breathe. So you don't have to worry about because some of the Portal Fantasy, the lit RPG stuff, they're like, I get it, culture shock. How is this possible? Is this real? But at a certain point in time, you kind of have to accept your reality, and it gets annoying if you drag it out. Like, how dumb are you? Like, we've been over this already. I can almost promise that's not the case here because you don't write those characters.
No.
So,
but they would be hesitant. I mean, think about it. How hesitant would you be in your day in the life to accept the concept that, and I'll just make it up, but that you can shoot a lightning bolt from your hand or something as an example. It may not be an actual example from the book, but using it as for
but at a certain point in time, you have to be aware of the world around you, observing the world around you, and realize you're not in Kansas anymore. Even if it's a dream, in this dream reality, stuff is happening if I don't, do X, Y, or Z. So I get your point, but at a certain point in time, you can't just drag that out forever, because then you make your character look like a moron.
Right.
No, that's exactly right. It's a debate the characters have, but yes. Well, before the end of the first book, they're not only committed to the reality of it, they are committed. I mean, to use some gamer language, they're committed to the humanity and the value of the NPCs. Right? They're putting themselves on the line for these other humans who, lived apparently 5,000 years before them and on a different continent.
So one of the things that some gamers like and others don't, so there's no wrong answer, is getting into the nitty-gritty of the actual survival. Like, yeah, you actually have to count how many rations you bring and stuff goes bad. So if you have to factor that into gameplay. Others like to just wave their hand and pretend, we've just got food. How did you handle that in the book? Because obviously when you go back in time, food preservation isn't what we have. I mean, they don't have a freezer they can just go open. Is that something you address in the novel?
I mean,
yeah,
yes, to a great extent. I mean, it ebbs and flows. So I think there's always a concern about supplies, or even the use of or creation of antibiotics from mold and stuff like that.
Right.
So there's a lot of nerdy stuff that happens with regards to the science aspect of things, but also about rations and how do we have stuff and how do we carry this? If you're in a semi-arid environment. Remember, this is 5,000 plus years ago, so it's
Sahara
not
was
exactly
wetter
like
than it is
now, but it's close. So you have no guarantee of water. So those are all things that they concern themselves about.
Yeah. You should imagine though, and that's true. And those are threats. But the book has a pretty brisk pace on a regular basis. They are encountering like this. You can kind of divide it into 5 acts, and each act has kind of like a mid-act encounter and an end-of-act encounter, or climax. And yes, they're worrying about carrying melons and eating roots and hunting deer, but like the action is they are fighting, strange carnivorous assassin races, and they are entering enemy fortresses at night to try to rescue prisoners, and they are having there's a big climactic, like 3-chapter long battle at the end where there's like explosives going off and gigantic impervious monsters.
So you acknowledge it without dwelling on it for the adventure. I got you.
Yeah, it's there. It's not like the principal source of the tension or the action.
So my last question about you, because I don't want to take all night with you. I'd have fun, but your wives might get mad. So with the fighting, obviously, like if you're going back to ancient Egypt, for instance, they had a very, set of weapons that were common to that area and that region. But you've got people coming with a vast knowledge from the global history because they're from modernity. So did you have them in every book pick weapons appropriate to the time and place they're at? Or did you let them sort of be creative in the moment with their own modern knowledge? Hopefully,
you got to remember when they came over, they had only what they were carrying. So
right.
That's the resources they started from. Now, like Dave's already mentioned the concept of bombs, which were not necessarily prevalent in ancient Egypt that we know of. So to answer your question, I mean, I think that there's certain things that could be evolved easily enough from natural resources that were available, so you could bring some modernity into the ancient times to leverage it. But I think the majority of it is make of what you can with what you have.
Yeah, there's a lot of spears and slings and bows, and in book 2, atlatls. I mean, I think literally one of the things we had to make sure we did in the book 1 was correctly account for the right number of pocket knives carried by. We had to audit the number of pocket knives. Were there 2 or 4 knives in the group?
I would imagine archaeologists would have lots of tools on themselves on a dig site that would come in handy later.
On the dig site, but not necessarily on them.
Right.
I don't know. I always keep at least one pocket knife on me. So
yeah, and several of the characters did, right? And that's yeah. So but, not a gun.
Right. So with the combat scenes and the weapons, did you guys put any hands-on experience with them before you wrote these books, or just let your library card give you the information?
Some.
Yeah.
Mike's done, I think, more martial arts than I have. My martial arts experience is many years old at this point. So that's
and you got to realize, especially in book one, it was both the combat skills, physical combat skills, and the use of explosives. So yeah,
Right.
so
Well, I'm just thinking more like I've thrown an adel before, and it's not as, I mean, once you get it down, it makes sense from a kinesiology, like from the kinesiology,
but it's
body
not
physics,
intuitive.
but it's
You
not
don't pick it up
intuitive.
and go, aha, easy. Yeah,
Right. And there's some cool videos where they found some of the ice melted in Siberia, and they found one that was preserved because it was flash frozen. So it is like with the arrows, all of it, and they used that to create one to the whoever died with it was hunting woolly mammoth, and they were able to recreate those. And one, we realized that the form follows function, so almost all of them across the globe that had them were almost all the same, but they weren't as smooth to throw as we would think, because people that make them with modern materials, it's the modern material makes it a little easier than doing it with wood. So it's just fascinating to think how that changes things.
Yeah. The nice thing is that we have such a wide variety of the cast of characters is such a diverse background. Like Surgeon is a former like special forces Indian soldier, and so his experience plays in. Sus, Francois has lots of education and lots of eclectic knowledge across the sciences and whatnot. So he'd be the guy who'd be coming up with recipes for strange concoctions and whatnot, and or the explosives, etc. So Luana is an Aboriginal Australian who lived in a desert most of her life, so she brings those experiences. So there's a lot that the team overall can bring towards practical usage and whatnot. So and I think we try to leverage that as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, so in the first two books, I mean, one of the things that's been fun is almost no swords. Swords are a fairly late invention. It's not clear that for many reasons, it's not clear in many respects. It's not clear that they're an advance over spears. People usually are fighting with spears in these books. And so to a great extent, the sort of military technology is the technology of the humans in the setting, 3000 BCE, or
well, swords make
10,000 BCE.
Make less sense anyway from a tactical. Like, are you familiar with the Lindy Page, the YouTube channel?
I don't know.
He's a classically trained historian who's fascinated by all the things. But one of the things people were like, no, you should have these people for medieval, using more swords. So he got a bunch of people that have been training in medieval swordcraft for years. I mean, they're skilled in their craft, HEMA experts in the whole nine yards, historical European martial arts.
Right.
And so I was just in case the listeners didn't know the acronym. And then he got a bunch of high school kids, or whatever they call high school in England, and he gave them a spear and gave them an hour-long lesson. And like half the time they were able to beat the swordsman just because the benefit of the reach.
Because reach,
an hour of training
is huge. You hit the other guy first.
Right. And just the phalanx of, just packing yourself close enough together that you essentially become a porcupine.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Is there anything about this the time trial series that we haven't asked that you think the readers need to know?
I think they're funny.
Okay.
I think they're entertaining. People like them. They will continue to like them.
And where are you in the process of for book 3? Is that going to be coming out soon? I know the pipeline with Bain is not as linear as some people understand publishing to be.
It's we haven't started it yet, but I suspect it will be soonish.
Okay. And how long are these books?
About 100,000 words, 110, something like that. 110, 120.
So that's a good chunk.
I think 120,000 typically.
Oh.
I think both of them
these aren't tiny books. Okay.
No.
Yeah, they're also not giant, right? I mean, That's a pretty normal length for for a thriller.
Yeah.
That's short for an epic fantasy.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll start with you, DJ. Where might, if people wanted to stalk you, follow you, get your books and such, where might they find you on the internet?
I'm very active on X. David John Butler is my handle. I've also I've been pretty open about letting people into my Discord server. Even after John Delaroz got in and tried to pick fights about it, I'm still letting people into my Discord server. So if you want to come to a sort of semi-private venue and hang out with me, that's the place to do that.
Okay, and that'll all be in the show notes, dear listener. And what about you, Rothman?
So I'm also on X at Michael A. Rothman. On Facebook, you can find me at M.A. Rothman. I don't remember the URL, but I'm the only one who evidently I've got a lot of clones out there. So I'm the only one that has actually got a blue check mark. So it's the M.A. Rothman with a blue check mark. That'll be me. So
I have one try to sell me some things, but it wasn't you, obviously.
Yeah. Evidently not.
Yeah. But there was a timeshare involved, so take that with what you will. All right, so this is the part, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book. It really does make a difference, even for traditionally published authors. They like to see the reviews because it helps other readers say, hey, this is my cup of tea. And with that, you can find us, dear listener, on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things the BitChutes, the Rumble, the YouTube, the TikTok, the Twitter, the Spotify, our Discord, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. And finally, our email, Blasters and Blades podcast @gmail.com, for professional purposes only. People save the shenanigans from Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, Twitter, and the email. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. And if you put in the comment sections for the podcast, I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee till it pours out of their eyeballs, and they'll float away on a river of Java or Mountain Dew if you're Rothman. Brain fuel, I'm told. Your doctor will approve too. Not really, but we'll go with it. And with that, I'd like to thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time. We'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Thank you for coming on, you two. This was a lot of fun. I'm going to have to definitely check these books out. And when I do, dear listener, I write my book reviews for Upstream Reviews. It's a Substack where they review all kinds of stuff all over the spectrum of specfic. And if you're looking for your next great read, you should check that out. They are not a sponsor. I just like what they do. And with that, I'm going to hit the end button. Don't cuss yet, Rothman. Wait for it.